What do you mean fat might cause diabetes and insulin resistance? I thought it was carbs. Why do you keep changing shit on me, motherfucker? And shit. More shit. This is what happens when you go live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live stream from ScottTheTruckDriver and shit. You'll have to bear with me. I changed my setup a little bit, so it's going to be a little rough today. I'm having focus problems and all kinds of shit. But anyways, as many of you know, when I do a live stream, it's kind of where I do a spiel and I have a topic that I discuss. So save any questions or anything that requires my attention for the Q&A. I mean, talk amongst yourselves about the topic as you see fit, or if you guys want to talk in the chat amongst yourselves. But I could see some people have shown up. We got Spive, we got Cat Marlette, we got Erfrin. You know, most of the regulars to the channel have made it, despite me dropping the ball on posting the, far enough ahead of time for people to plan around it. But that's okay. We'll still cover some really important information today that everyone can benefit from. Now, one of the problems with the fact that we became obese, is we didn't understand why. We just thought, okay, I'm eating shitty food, so therefore, and I'm not exercising enough, so I must be, fucking myself up. But the thing is there's so many people of normal body weight that because they don't become obese, they don't even realize the fucking mistakes that they're making. They're piling in these sugary, fucked up foods, also loaded with vegetable oil. They're inflaming themselves, and they're getting just as sick as obese people. And they're unwilling to change because they look okay in the mirror. They look good enough. They're like, I'm healthy, look at me, I'm thin. He's not healthy, he's fat. That's the mentality, and it's wrong. Because just as many normal body weight people can benefit from this information as obese individuals. So how did we become insulin resistant? The vegans just love to blame fat. And, for a while I vehemently disagreed with them, but I tried to seek out an understanding of their point of view on insulin resistance, particularly my most hated vegan doctor is Dr. Greger, but he is a staunch, meats and fats cause insulin resistance, so I wanted to kind of figure out why the fuck a doctor is coming up with this when it's clear that if you take the carbs out of the diet, that you reverse insulin resistance, you reverse diabetes, but there's got to be something to it. And ultimately, what happens is you start out on the standard American diet, which is high in fat and carbs. Now, we're not just talking about meat, so I'm not looking to get into a fucking vegan debate. But, fat and carbs. And the kinds of fats are inflammatory because they're vegetable oils, and they're in just about every fast food, restaurant food, and all that other shit. And, of course, grains, refined carbs, flour, bread, sugar, all high GI, fucking carbs. And so we're pumping ourselves full of these things, but we're only really using a small portion of that energy that we're putting in. So the carbs come in and put us in a carb burning mode. And when you are in carb burning mode, aka your glycogen is full, which holds about 2,000 calories of glucose in your muscles and your liver, and you're taking in and spiking your insulin quite regularly throughout the day, then all of that vegetable oil and saturated fat and other fats that you eat, you do not have access to. It gets stored almost immediately. It floats around in your blood some too. And it turns out that genetics, this is where genetics come into play. Some of us are gifted with the ability to make shit tons of fucking fat cells. We can grow fat cells like no tomorrow. Turns out you're more protected than some of your healthier looking motherfuckers eating the same shit. They're going to get sicker a lot quicker, so to speak. Hey, that rhymed. I should be like Dr. Seuss or some shit. But because you can make fat cells, you're not going to reach the second stage of decline as quickly as somebody who can't. There are people that have a small amount of fat cells that they can make. So all of that fat coming in and all of the spillover for when they overfill their glycogen that gets converted to fat, and not good fat, and I've said this repeatedly in the past, it all fills up those fat cells. And then when that storage is full, you begin another stage. And that's when the fat starts spilling out into the organs. And that is where insulin resistance tends to start. And then your liver, of course, fills with fat. Your pancreas fills with fat. Fat can't go anywhere. It's stuck. It clogs your arteries. This whole time you've been inflaming yourself too, which causes the small dense LDL to go to work to fucking clog your arteries, causing you to have heart attack, heart disease, causing more problems with diabetes and so on and so forth. So then you're in this second stage. And this is usually when your visceral fat develops, when the belly measurement starts to rise. If you look around, you'll notice there are plenty of normal body weight motherfuckers with a normal BMI, but have a larger belly area around the belly button. That means they're thin on the outside, fat on the inside. They've already filled their subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is fine. You can hold fat under your skin all day and not cause any metabolic disease. But when the visceral fat comes, when your subcutaneous fat is at capacity, and you get a limited amount based on your genetics, then you start packing it in around the organs in the middle and within the liver and pancreas. So that's the second stage. This is the stage where you become fucked. Because there'll be a point where you exceed that capacity and fat just goes anywhere it can. Throughout your body, in between the organs, in the muscles, everywhere, there will be fatty deposits, causing systemic inflammation, first of all, which happens when your fat cells are full, but causing just a systemic failure of your body to the point where your health is critical. You're in critical condition. You're probably in a smorgasbord of fucking medications. You're on insulin at this point. You're fucked. And this can happen in thin individuals, in obese individuals. It's just a matter of time. And the earlier you catch this, the better off you will be, the longer a health span you will live. But I see people all the time of all shapes and sizes blatantly ignoring what they're doing to themselves with the standard American diet simply because they haven't been diagnosed with anything yet. They're like, I'm fine. So what? I'm fat. I'm big is beautiful. Ignoring the consequences of these actions. And there's going to be a video that I'm going to go through a little bit here that kind of goes over some of this that I'm going to afterwards put in the description. I'll tell you what to search as we look at it. With Dr. Ted Naiman, who was suggested to me by, let's see, Steve sent me an email on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. Says he probably caught Ted's latest interesting thoughts on either high fat or high carbs. So we're going to go through that a little bit. So when a vegan tells me that fat causes insulin resistance, that it causes, diabetes, they're only telling you part of the story. You see, you've always kept yourself in this carb mode and allowed the fat to spill over. There's evidence that suggests you can reverse this with a low-fat, high-carb diet. And Ted says this, much to my chagrin. He says he still thinks that the, high-fat, low-carb is the way to go. But we'll get into that. But the bottom line is if you are eating shit tons of carbs, you cannot eat a lot of fat, if any. And vice versa. If you're eating shit tons of fat, you cannot eat a lot of carbs. Not if you want access to the fat. The key is to burn the fat. And here's my problem with, and he doesn't really acknowledge this in the video, but it's my theory on why I believe a low-fat, high-carb diet ultimately fails. Because the moment you spill over on a high-carb, low-fat diet, the moment you exceed your glycogen capacity, you're making fat. And because you're on a high-carb diet, you don't have access to the fat that you make, so you store it. And then you slowly start to build. It might take you a little bit longer because you're being healthy, but you're slowly beginning to store that fat in all the wrong places. And once your subcutaneous fat capacity is reached, you then start expanding into the visceral fat. And then once that is reached, you'll be all over your body in places that don't need to be. And your insulin resistance will skyrocket. By that point, you'll already be diabetic, fully diabetic, and have heart disease or any of the other chronic diseases. Cancer, also a metabolic disease, being proven. So it's really an either-or situation. Now, I know a lot of people who do cyclical keto, or they do keto during the week and they, eat whatever the fuck they want on the weekends. You're not doing yourself any health favors because, first of all, if you're going back to the standard American diet, you're getting both. You're getting high carb, high fat. So you really got to be careful when it comes to having a high-fat diet versus a high-carb diet. You should never do both at the same time. Not even in the same day, I would contend. If you're going to have a carb day, it should be a low-fat day. And on days when you're keto, you need to keep your carbs way under 50. And then you will chip away at that fat spillage that we're all here on this channel trying to lose. So ultimately, they're not wrong when they tell you that fat causes insulin resistance. But it's carbs that lead to that fat spilling out all over your body. It's carbs that lead to your liver filling up with fat, causing hepatic being liver, insulin resistance. It's them carbs that cause the spillover to get into the pancreas and cause your pancreas to no longer secrete enough insulin to manage your blood sugar. And then, so all your cells are crammed with energy. There's fat everywhere. Glucose can't get to your cells. Your metabolism drops as a result because the energy can't get where it needs to go. The brain says, okay, time to shut shit down. It's all of these factors that have led us to the point that we're at. And what I've discovered for myself is it can be reversed, especially if you catch it in time. Now, there are people that are dealing with, were a lot further along than me. I get letters all the time that let themselves slip way past the point of, oh, fuck, I better do something. and they're just now getting back. But they are getting back, and they're doing it through a ketogenic style diet. So before I, continue, I'm going to go through a few things here as best as I can. First, I wanted to point out that this was brought to my attention by a bunch of you through my website feedback as far as the research page. There is going to be a study this summer of the ketogenic diet. Interest in the ketogenic diet grows. I'm just making sure my voice is still coming through. And put that on. All right. So, yeah, this is ongoing. They're going to take 25 overweight and obese adults. They're going to put them in a highly controlled feeding study that will take full-time residents for 3 months, which 3 months is a little short. I would like to see 6 months or 12 months, but hey, we'll take what we can get. So they're going to do a keto study. And I hope they don't fuck it up. I hope they have a good control group. I hope they pit it up. Well, it looks like they're going to put it up against, maybe the standard American diet. But, we're working on it. We are changing slowly. And that's good news. So let's get into the video. Now, this video comes from High Intensity Health. And if you just search Ted Naiman and High Intensity Health, you'll come across this. I want to thank Steve for suggesting this video. If you're here, say thanks and shit. But here, I'm just going to place a few clips from it, but I ultimately think if you can, go to High Intensity Health, and the video is on January 22nd. And you can also watch this entire video is crammed full of good little nuggets of information. They covered a lot of ground, and I highly suggest watching it. And High Intensity Health has a lot of good interviews of all the key players out there in the low-carb community especially. So there's that. There are some things I disagree with in High Intensity Health. They tend to lean more towards the optimal health department and worrying about every little thing, including supplementation, which I'm not a fan of. But ultimately, the interviews are chock full of nuggets of knowledge that can lead you to other forms of research to improve. So let's hear this first clip. Let's make sure my shit's all ready to go.
Very interesting. So it may seem like a blessing in one sense, like, oh my gosh, you have no fat cells, right, so that you can stay lean, but there's a metabolic consequence or cost to that.
There's a huge metabolic cost to that, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that the patient that may look lean is actually metabolically obese. So they have that individual that looks ripped, that like if you were to look at their maybe coronary artery calcium score or other diseases, which we can kind of transition to, linked with elevated levels of insulin, it would be.
So as you can hear, they're pretty much, hold on, fucking volume. So as you can see, you can have somebody ripped that's fucked up. And it's a true story. And Dr. Naiman has mentioned that he did have patients who were ripped that were fucked up, just as bad as an obese individual. And he's also had obese individuals who were metabolically fine. It's the obesity paradox, I think it's called. So it's important to understand that just because a person looks healthy, and they want to tell you too, you see it all over YouTube, people taking their fucking shirts off, pounding the fuckmaster every day, I'm healthy as shit. And they're eating standard American horse shit. There's a certain fasting channel I used to watch, would pound the standard American diet and counseled thousands of people to do the same thing. Exercising the shit out of them, showing off, taking the shirt off every fucking video. They're not being healthy. And that's not my goal. My goal isn't to be ripped and have a six-pack. I don't care if I look a little pudgy the rest of my life, as long as my health and wellness are locked in. And I continue to make strides in weight loss. In fact, I was bitching on my blog today that I was trying to gain some weight because I'm doing a 10-day fast next week, which will be documented both on the blog and here on this channel. I wanted to try and gain some weight ketogenically without having a cheat day, and I haven't. And I haven't regained any weight either, despite yesterday eating 3 meals, I thought I gained weight, and then I took a big steaming shit earlier, and lo and behold, no weight gain. I was 187 afterwards, after the shit and taking a bath. Lo and behold, because I was like, okay, I just took a dump. Did I really gain some weight or no? No, I didn't. I'm still at my little set point. So I can't even eat my way up, despite what I thought was overeating. So, and I'm sorry, I'm being a little vulgar about that. But anyways, so let's just continue with this clip and so I can comment. I got a little distracted there.
Be probably pretty high.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But that brings us to a really good point, the personal fat threshold. So everyone has...
And that's what he's talking about. That's what I was mentioning, is the personal fat threshold. The genetic level of fat cells you can create. There's a limit. Bro science always told me there was no limit to this. All them gym motherfuckers say, you'll just keep making fat cells, and then once you make them, they don't go anywhere. You ever heard that theory? You'll know what I'm talking about.
It's this genetically built-in amount of fatness that they can achieve, right? As you get fatter, you can either have adipocyte hypertrophy, where you get bigger fat cells, or you can have adipocyte hyperplasia, where you grow more.
So those are two different states. One, your fat cells hold more, and the other, you just make more fat cells. This is all genetic.
And if you're someone who's genetically able to grow more fat cells, you could be 600 pounds and completely insulin sensitive. I have a patient.
And that's what I was mentioning. There are obese people who are metabolically healthy. Chances are you're not one of them, because they're rare. They're like a unicorn and shit. It's easy to figure out which one you are, too. You can go get checked.
Patient who's 450 pounds, perfect insulin levels, very insulin sensitive, probably could just expand forever and beyond, my 600-pound life or whatever that shows.
I'm sure they would run into other problems, though. Yes, subcutaneous fat is not a big deal in the terms of metabolism. But I don't think everybody is blessed to the point where they could get to that level of weight without experiencing the complications. I don't think there's a lot of people that can make unlimited fat cells. There's definitely a limit to how far they'll expand. So no matter how big you can get, you're still going to spill over. And if you're eating sugar, some of that spillover is immediate. Fructose is immediately spilled out into the fatty liver and immediately ramps up insulin resistance, not to mention all the havoc it causes hormonally, and that it causes you to not feel satiated, to crave more, to overeat. There's all kinds of bad things with sugar. But as carbs in general, when glycogen's full, it's being turned into fat. That fat has to have a place to go, because you can't use it while you're a carb burner. When you can't burn it off. When you go to the gym and pound the fuckmaster and you burn 1,000 calories in the gym, that's 1,000 calories of glycogen you burned, with maybe a little bit of fatty acid swallowed up by your muscles when you're doing some more sustainable cardio. But if you're doing high intensity shit, that's carbs you're burning. That's glycogen in the muscles you're burning. Your brain's running off the glycogen in the liver. So you got to keep in mind that a lot of people that work out a lot, they're burning glycogen if they're carb burners. If they're keto, it's another story. You get more access to your fat. You're still burning glycogen, by the way, but you're slowly replenishing it with gluconeogenesis at that point.
And but other people, I have patients from Southeast Asia, for example, from India, and some of these locations, they'll gain just 10 pounds of fat, just a tiny amount of abdominal fat, and bam, they're horrifically insulin resistant. The second they overfill the one adipocyte they've got, they're diabetic instantly. Their insulin level goes through the roof. They're completely diabetic. They literally cannot get fatter. They've hit their personal fat threshold. And that's what hyperinsulinemia is. You hit your personal fat threshold, you can't get fatter, and now you've got, the next step is diabetes. And
that's the bottom line. And it doesn't matter if you're obese or not. It can happen to normal body weight people. In fact, 40% of normal body weight people run into these same metabolic conditions. But they don't give a shit because they look good in the fucking mirror. So, I was really impressed with this interview. I highly recommend it. Let's look at this next clip here.
Have caused a lot of confusion amongst individuals. My brother-in-law's an interventional cardiologist, and so he'll see someone come in with chest pain and things like that and do a stent, and he would expect, based upon their body composition, that they would have really nasty occluded arteries, but they're squeaky clean. In contrast, the 56-year-old relatively lean male that is a smoker and so forth, their coronary arteries are a disaster. So we talk about this quite frequently. Do you see that in your practice too?
Absolutely. I mean, you'll see thinner people getting more Alzheimer's dementia. And so for
Alzheimer's being type 3 diabetes. It has to do with carbs. And it's the carbs are the root, because you don't have access to the fat. You need access to the fat to get rid of the fat. And it's even if you're not taking in fat, when you overeat carbs, which is going to happen, you can't calculate within 350 calories how many fucking, how much calories you're getting from carbohydrate. You can't. It's impossible. There's going to be errors. And it only takes that small amount to gain weight and to spill out into fat. And if your glycogen's full, you're making fat from carbs. Carbs don't always stay carbs if the shit gets full. And because you're a carb burner, you can't access the fat that you're making, and it slowly piles up. Now, granted, on a low-fat, high-carb, healthy carb diet, you will last a hell of a lot longer than the standard American diet. You will improve a whole hell of a lot more than somebody eating a standard American diet. You'll still hit an end to your health span sooner than may be possible with a high-fat, low-carb approach.
For a lot of people, getting fatter is protecting you from hyperinsulinemia and high blood sugar, high insulin, diabetes. As long as your fat cells can just suck up all the fat and glucose, you're actually protected a fair amount.
Interesting.
The problem is when you get this visceral fat, you've already filled up your subcutaneous fat.
And it's really easy for most people, not all people, to measure your visceral fat. There's a ratio around the belly button that should be less than half your height. I'm at 0.48 is my ratio. I'm healthy right now, according to that measurement. I was not healthy to begin with, so that measurement works for me. You can go down to fucking Walmart and buy you a tape measure and do this measurement. Now, there is a caveat. There are some people, particularly lean people, who this will not really show an accurate establishment of your visceral fat. But as you shrink your visceral fat, the measurement around the belly shrinks. And to me, that's my most important fucking metric, is how much progress am I making in that area? I'm at 35 inches. I started at like 38, 39, 40, somewhere in there 3 years ago. So I've made a lot of progress in this department. But I did stall for a year because I kept eating shitty foods. I kept drinking alcohol. And since I've cut those things out, that area has been slowly, and I emphasize slowly, shrinking. Which is what the goal ultimately should be. It shouldn't be about aesthetics and rippling muscles and six-pack abs. Although if you get the six-pack from being obese, chances are you got rid of all your visceral fat. But you're not exempt. There could be some fat under the abs in the organ area that can cause you metabolic disease and put you on medications, insulin, and all kinds of shit.
The subcutaneous fat fills up first. Really harmless, very protective, great stuff. But then when you run out of that, you fill up your visceral fat. Now you're in the hyperinsulinemia zone. And the next step is ectopic fat deposition, where you're just packing fat in anywhere you can. Your liver, your pancreas, your heart.
So that is pretty much just lays out what I was saying, that it's just ectopic fat that just gets spilled out everywhere. And that's where you start having grabbers and strokes and all kinds of adverse consequences. So I can't stress enough that carbs are like the key that unlocks the door. You know, you get rid of the carbs, you can burn off all of that fat, the ectopic fat, the visceral fat, and the subcutaneous fat. You'll get full access to all that shit. And you might not become completely lean necessarily, but you will become healthy. And the more science we keep doing to prove this, the better off we are. Now, fasting is another way of doing this. But if you fast, you can very quickly, on a standard American diet, if you're eating high fat, high carb, you're going to rebuild all the bad fat very quickly. So you'll only lose like the subcutaneous fat. And anybody who knows from fasting, the first fat you lose are the arms, the face, the legs. In my case, my ass went away completely, you know, but I kept the fat around the belly. And that's the one I wanted to get rid of the most because I was eating all that shit. Now that I've started to really be strict, not have cheat days, not have fucking alcohol, that fat is starting to go down. And it's going down slowly, which means if you eat the shitty shit and you put it on really fast, then it takes a lot longer to get rid of it, it seems, in my case. There are reports of people who do burn through it a lot quicker. Probably some gym exercise might help with that. But then we get into the metabolism thing, and are you paying for your workouts? So there's that. And I think I got one more clip I wanted to talk to from this video.
And so for people listening right now, they might be thinking like, well, they're talking about fat a lot, fat cells having too much fat. Then why would a high-fat diet help me? So help us kind of grab.
Now this part is going to be a little controversial for my fellow ketos, as I know I had a reaction for it, but I've already stated my opinion that even on a low-fat, high-carb approach, if you fill up your glycogen and overfill it, you're making fat that you can't have access to, so you're going essentially just slowing down the process. And if you're already fucked up in doing that, I would state that you're just not going to make progress.
Grapple with that. And
well, actually, okay, so I'm a low carb guy, right? And I'm going to take some hate mail from the low carb community for saying this, but you can actually reverse insulin resistance by eating
And by the way, that statement right there is pretty much Dr. Greger's entire vegan argument.
Either a low fat diet or a low carb diet. And we have studies that...
Except Dr. Greger will never say that the low carb diet will do the same thing. You won't hear that out of him.
That completely prove this. I mean, we have studies where they randomize people to an extremely low fat, high carb diet or an extremely high fat, low carb diet, and both groups reverse insulin resistance exactly the same. Waist circumference comes down, insulin comes down, all the markers you're looking at come down. Why do I prefer low carb? Well, I think it's better for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it makes way more sense from an evolutionary.
All right, and he goes on into, our ancestral diet, what happens if you drop a motherfucker in the woods, what kind of diet are they going to have, that kind of stuff. And I agree with all of that. If the closer we eat to the way our ancestors eat, the more healthy we are compared to now. Even recent history, if we were to eat like we did prior to 1900, we would be 10 times as healthy. I wouldn't say we'd be 100% healthy, but we would be a hell of a lot healthier even if we went back to the 50s, the way we ate in the 50s. You would notice a marked improvement in the obesity epidemic, in the diabetes epidemic. All of these epidemics would be greatly reduced, not eliminated, if we just dialed back the clock on the kinds of foods we ate and how often we ate. And so you got to think in terms, what would I do if I was dropped in a fucking woods? What would I get to eat? And would I have supplements to go with it? Would I be out there pounding the fuckmaster, or would I be out there trying to find food? And if you think about it from that perspective, then you realize what kind of food environment we're in. To where if you got a couple bucks, you can walk into McDonald's and get shit tons of energy with very little nutrition. So it's thinking about those things in the perspective of whether or not carbs or fat are the cause. And ultimately, having a high carb diet puts you at risk for fat spillover. If you are on a high fat, low carb diet, you are using the fat. Even if you're LDL, you're small, buoyant, you're bigger, there's two different particle sizes. Your LDL can rise, but you're using it. Your triglycerides fall compared to the low fat group because you're using your triglycerides. When you're a low fat, high carb motherfucker, those triglycerides start to pile up because you're not burning them. And that causes problems. So I do not believe in the low fat approach. We've tried it for years and failed for years. So without getting into the vegan argument, which is taking out a lot of protein in the process, I do not believe that going low fat is the best solution. If there's somebody that just can't be keto, then yeah, go with a lower fat, high carb approach. It does work for some people. And it might prolong your health span to the point where it's, kind of a diminishing return. I don't know. I don't want to take that chance because another thing I notice on the high carb diet, and let me put my fucking face back up on the screen. Another thing I notice on a high carb diet is I'm hungry a lot more. And, it's not as satiating. And I don't like being hungry. And I eat less calories on a ketogenic diet without hunger and without a drop in metabolism. And, I even had somebody today tell me they're losing too much weight on the ketogenic diet and they were worried about that. And, that's an issue that I'd like to have someday to where I'm struggling to put on weight because that means I can go have a starchy carb day to make some fat, to put some fat back on for later use in healthy places, subcutaneously, because I know I can hold a decent amount of subcutaneous fat. I've seen it. But without using sugar-fat combinations to flood the liver with fat and to flood, the pancreas with fat and the heart and the fucking arteries and all that other shit. So that's basically what I wanted to get to there. Now we're going to get into some Q&A as soon as I bring the motherfucking chat up. So now is the time period where you can ask motherfucking questions and shit. Now I'm going to scroll through here and see what I can see. Let's see here. Barry Fennel. I was dreaming I was eating a fresh homemade plain bagel and it was so good and shit. That's a craving. I don't have those anymore. I used to have those quite regularly. And that's another thing we got to worry about is if you cheat, if you have cheat days, you're going to crave. There's going to be cravings. And we need to abstain to get rid of that for as long as possible. The longer you go without being exposed to an addictive substance, the less addicted you become. And I've discovered that since I quit drinking. Less often am I desiring a drink. Since I've quit sugar, less often am I desiring sugar. To the point now where I'm almost to the point where I don't even look at it as food anymore. I just see boxes of sugar on shelves and piles of sugar in baked goods sections. And bread, don't even get me started. So, Spive21, will coffee take you out of autophagy? No, it will not, as long as it's black, especially. You can add heavy cream or butter to the coffee, and you will get a slight insulin response, very slight, but you will not be kicked out of autophagy. Ultimately, what'll kick you out of autophagy is over 50 calories of protein or carbs in 1 3 to 4 hour period, and you are done with autophagy. So, and for those of you who don't know what autophagy is, it's when your cells break themselves down, kind of commit suicide to provide amino acids and other things that the body can use as fuel because you're not taking anything in. And this is mainly a protein-based thing. So some of those amino acids are being used to create your baseline glucose to keep things flowing along nicely. So what else have we got here in shit? Let me double check the super chats because I haven't been paying attention. Make sure I get to everyone who does that. Nope, no super chats today. That's fine. So, Susan Dale, thanks, Scott. I'm doing the fat fast and I'm losing 2 pounds per week. I now just have under 20 pounds left to lose. I also don't have cravings or hunger on a keto fasting lifestyle. And so that's awesome that you're getting that progress from the fat fast. I assume that you're fat adapted. I do not recommend fat fasting unless you're fat adapted. You want you want full access to fat when you do this. You don't want to sprinkle it in between the standard American diet for all of the reasons I just said. You're not going to necessarily be able to burn it as easily. And it can cause buildup in all the wrong places. But if you are a fat burning machine, as in you spent 6 to 8 weeks at strict keto, and you decide to do a fat fast, you're going to use that fat. You'll probably use it before you store it if you don't eat a lot of it. If you eat a lot of it, you're going to put some away. But you're going to pull it right back out and use it on the times that you're not consuming. To get into that, next week I'm starting a 10-day hybrid fast. It's going to be, the first 4 days are going to be a fat fast. I'm choosing those days because the first 3 to 4 days tend to be the hardest part of a long fast. I did attempt to try and gain some weight on ketogenic diet this week by eating full time, not fasting necessarily, though I still end up doing a 16-hour fast because I'm not hungry in the morning. However, I've managed to not gain any weight. I've been stuck at like 187, 188. I did see 189 briefly this morning, but then the trip to the bowl ruined that. So I'm going into this fast, and I'm estimating around 10 pounds of loss, about a pound a day, which will put me in the 170s at the end of the fast, which is the bottom of where I want to weigh. I was 175 in high school. If I hit the 170s, that'll be the lowest weight I've been since high school. I don't want to stay there necessarily. I'd be happy in the low 180s. Like I said, 180 to 185. Good range. I don't want to constantly be in my 170, but who knows? We'll see when we get there. But there's going to be a weight regain, I know. So after the 4 days of fat fast, I'm going to transition into a water fast. By then, I should be smooth sailing all the way to the end of the fast, because this is the period of time where most people report hunger goes away completely. Metabolism does drop, but as I know from my previous fat fasting experience, that slows that process. Taking in fat slows the metabolic rate drop for some reason. You know, you're not taking in enough calories, so maybe it's kicking you into a kind of a fat burning overdrive where you get more access to your body fat, therefore not being deprived of energy, therefore no metabolic drop. But I do know when you go into water fast long term, you'd get a metabolic drop. And this has been illustrated in all kinds of fasting research. If you look in the description, there's a link to products I recommend on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. And I recently watched the Science of Fasting video, which goes heavily into this as far as fasting goes. So there's that. But fat fasting, I still believe, for obvious reasons, that you should only fat fast if you're not a carb burner. So Lucretia, Scott, is a keto diet also a gluten-free diet by default? Well, yes, because you're generally not eating any pasta, wheat, any of that shit. So yes, you're gluten-free. Gluten is from wheat, and most of the wheat-based grains are extremely bad for you metabolically. They're very high GI. They're usually processed. Even if they say whole grain, they still pulverize the shit out of it, raising the glycemic index, causing you all kinds of issues. And if you're eating any of those products, chances are you're going to tank your carb amount for the day. Maybe you could get away with a spoonful without fucking yourself. But you're ultimately, if you're not eating pasta and wheat-based things, you're gluten-free, pretty much. So I never really had a problem with gluten, I don't think. I don't think that moved the needle for me in health. My problem was definitely the sugar. It was also, of course, the vegetable oils, I believe, were fucking me up a lot. I had a lot of inflammation. I had allergies. I had problems that have all gone away. I haven't had any allergic reactions whatsoever. So there's that. Moises Vasquez. Sorry if I butcher names, by the way. I find I have less hunger if I eat carbs at night. I am intermittent fasting too. Seems to be working, and cravings are under control. You're eating carbs, and that means you're still a carb burner. And if you're doing short fasts and you're still a carb burner, can you guess what you're burning more of? You end up in this cycle where you're burning glycogen. And then you're refilling glycogen. And then you're burning glycogen. It takes 24 to 48 hours to empty your liver of glycogen based on physical activity. It takes 72 hours to deplete muscle glycogen, to the point where you start to see fat burning and ketosis. But if you're only doing say a 21 meal a day protocol, and I know this, I've tested it, I was plateaued a year on it, and you're eating carbs, you're going to hit a wall. You're going to plateau long before you get to where you want to go. And the reason for that is you're spinning your wheels. You're depleting your glycogen with the fast, but you're not going all the way with your glycogen depletion into ketosis. You won't be pissing ketones on 1 meal a day eating standard American diet. It's not going to happen. And the reason is because you're burning glycogen, then you're refilling glycogen, then you're burning glycogen. And if you're not careful when you refill the glycogen, you can spill over and make negative progress. So there's that. Lucretia, the first super chat of the night. Come to Pittsburgh and coach my mom. I do plan on at some point traveling and doing road trips and meeting up with people and talking and doing all of that. Unfortunately, right now, time is of a constraint to me, but I'm going to make a video on this coming week. I do plan on hitting the road this summer and spring, probably too. And I will go to various places and let you guys know so I can visit with you and get to know you, and maybe you guys can be interviewed on the channel on what your journey was like. I do want to interview people. I also want to set up a way for you guys to kind of call in to get interviewed. I wouldn't want to do that live because my past YouTube experience with live call-ins didn't work out too well. But I would like to set up a way that you guys can call in. I can interview you and talk with you about your personal journeys. And we'll have to coordinate something. Using Google Hangouts is the platform I'm looking at for that. And recording it and, with your permission, broadcasting to help other people and so on and so forth. But in the meantime, you should encourage your mother to watch everything you can on, not just my videos, because no one's going to listen to me say fuck and change their life, all right? They want to see proof. They want to see progress. They want to see science. So I'll add Pittsburgh to my list of travels because it's really not that far away. It's only a 6-hour drive from where I'm at. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't promise anything yet. But thank you, Lucretia, for contributing. Janie Bug, thank you for your contribution. Hello, Scott, my brother from another mother. I am proud of you. Keep the videos coming. And I will. And to that end, I've been struggling to get 3 videos out a week and the podcast, which the podcast has been doing well. People are downloading it. For those of you not familiar, I do a podcast every week of about 2 hours, audio only, that you can download and listen to on devices. That's on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. I will be offering like packages once I have enough podcasts to where you can get like all of them at once or something like that. So that way it's kind of like an audio book that you can listen to a lot of. But right now it's a lot of content for $2. You know, it's pretty much $1 an hour. Sometimes more. The last one was 2.5 hours that I just posted. But thank you, Janie. Your support is greatly appreciated, as is everyone who has supported me through ScottTheTruckDriver.com's tip jar. For those of you who buy the podcast, for those of you who read the daily blog Monday through Friday, and for those of you on Patreon who stuck it out even though I got so pissed off at Patreon. There is a group of people that are contributing that way as well as through here on the live streams with Super Chat. And if it were not for all of these people, I would not be able to spend the amount of time researching, reading your comments, and I get a lot of them now. It's hard to keep up with the letters and the research and the comments that I have to go through on a day-to-day basis. So I pretty much cherry pick the ones I can respond to, and I try to respond in a way that everybody gets the response, not just the person that sent the question. So I'm working harder. Pretty soon, this channel may be able to sustain me hiring some help. But right now we're not there yet. I the very least need to free myself from some of the other income streams that I have to do, but I just had a setback in that department. But I'll get into that later, this week when I cover the travel thing that I was going to talk about. Donna Kempson, I did my first 24-hour fast today. Went in after 23 days on keto. It felt good. Not much hunger, hangry, or obsession with food. Your videos helped a lot. Thank you so much. And congratulations. You know, and one of the things when you're first starting out, you should always start out with the minimum amount of fasting necessary to get results. When I first started out, I struggled just like all of you that are just starting out. You know, that 16 hours was a bitch. I was like, oh my God, it's fucking almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't fucking eaten yet. I'm going to die. And then gradually that became routine. I started to not get hungry until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I upped the ante and started doing 1 meal a day. And then I started to experiment with ADF or 2 24-hour fasts a week, you know. Do the bare minimum of fasting until it doesn't work. And the reason for this is the more fasting you do, the more of a metabolic shift you can have. This is especially true for carb burners. If you're unwilling to go keto, this is the approach. Minimum fasting for maximum results. When you plateau, up the fasting regimen and push a little bit each time to increase your fasting lengths. It's like a muscle. It's like going and pounding the Fuckmaster. You have to pound the Fuckmaster a lot before you can lift more, before you can run longer. It's the same with fasting. You have to exercise it to get it to work more. And I know people who are doing it as we speak that have gone from 16 and 8 to 24 to 36, 48s already, 72s without a problem. You know, you keep pushing it. And when the 72 is the bitch, this is where it starts to conflict when you're eating a standard American diet. You know, the 72-hour mark is a bitch. That's the hardest part to overcome when you're a carb burner, because that is the point in which you have no choice but to switch to being a fat burner. And if you have not fat adapted, you will not feel good. You will feel ravenously hungry. You will ultimately probably stop fasting at that point because you'll have so much intense hunger and cravings that you can't stand it. And then you'll binge afterwards and undo most of what you did on that 72-hour fast, which is why I don't, that's why I'm such a strong keto advocate at this point, because it deals with that hunger and craving issue. And without those issues, you don't overeat after a long fast. And the long fasts are easier to do. Instead of the I'm going to choke somebody for a cheeseburger hunger, you get the, maybe I could eat right now hunger. And I like that kind of hunger. The kind of hunger I'm like, yeah, I could probably eat right now, but don't give a fuck. Might as well not eat and shit. You know, that is a much more pleasant hunger level than, oh my God, I'm going to fucking die if I don't eat hunger. So I prefer that. CPAP machine. Yo, you still driving truck also? No, I am not. I am still doing Uber, which I know some people don't like, but it does what I need it to do. Like the other night I ran Uber at $24 an hour, which was awesome. It was a good night as far as financially. And, you know, I find Uber allows me to do this channel because I don't have to work it. I only work it to do extra. That if I need extra money, I work extra Uber. If I don't need extra money, I don't do any Uber. I also have a part-time job as a karaoke DJ now. So we'll get into that on some other time. I don't need to get too deep into that yet, because I don't know how permanent it is or if I'm just going to be a sub or what. But that's a part-time job that's once a week or whenever I want to sub. And that helps too. That helps the bottom line. But the majority of what I do is right here on YouTube at the moment, and I'd like to keep it that way. I do also have photography gigs. I just booked another client in February, so that's coming. I still have some client work that I still haven't fucking caught up on, too, from St. Lucia. I still haven't finished the St. Lucia video, because I suck. I suck ass. But ultimately, there's no room in my life for driving a truck right now. It doesn't mean I may never drive a truck again, but to be honest, I haven't looked back since I left trucking. Back in, I think it was September. Alrighty. What else we got? Donna Kempson, I've done 16-8 a few times a week. Then Scott recommended The Science of Fasting, which motivated me to do this today. That was a good documentary. There was a lot of data I was unaware of. I was unaware of the Russian studies. I don't want to mention this yet, at risk of you guys doing something dangerous. But I am looking into dry fasting. I gotta say, so far, what I've seen about dry fasting, I am not a fan of, but it turns out that there is data that the Russians studied for dry fasting that I will research eventually, but I gotta say, with the risk and the diminishing returns over a water fast, I will not probably advocate dry fasting. I know some of you have been asking me about it, some of you do it. I don't think, I think any progress you can get in autophagy and weight loss with a dry fast, you can get there with a water fast without risk. And being dehydrated carries a lot of risk, especially to the kidneys, especially with your electrolyte balance. Electrolyte goes too far out of balance, you die. And so I don't want to sign on for the dry fasting, but I am looking at it just to at least know. I myself probably will never do a dry fast longer than 72 hours if I ever even bother experimenting with it. But the fact that The Science of Fasting uncovered to me that, it's an older, I guess it's an older documentary too. I didn't even know that. It just popped up on my fucking Amazon account. But the fact that the Russians have all of this untranslated data that has yet to be translated. I mean, what the fuck? Come on, let's translate you got all of these fasting studies that could benefit millions of people. And yet we have to rely on Google Translate, which maybe does the job and would make the reading suck. Can we get some professional fucking Russian translator to translate all of that shit? I mean, how hard is that? Just saying. Alrighty. Let's see what else we got here. Honda Davison. I do 19 hours every week. Works for me. Not too hard. No more diabetes. I assume you're talking about dry fasting. Or 19 hours every day. Or are you talking water fasting? I don't know. That's kind of unspecific. I hope you're not talking about dry fasting. That's a lot of dehydration. Now, to be fair, Ramadan kind of does something like that, I think. I think they dry fast till sundown, which is all right, you're not going to die from, 72 hours is the part where it becomes questionable to me. So I wouldn't dry fast, at all. There's no need to. There's a point where you're just kind of diminishing returns. Same thing with long water fasts. If you regain all the weight afterwards because you tank your metabolism, that's a diminishing return. Long fasts tend to be used for treatment of diseases, not weight loss. So I don't really recommend. I'm experimenting with it just to see what happens to my metabolism when I combine it with a fat fast. But ultimately, I know that most of the weight I lose on a long fast is going to come back because my metabolism will shift. I mean, the goal obviously is to try and use keto to raise my metabolism after the fast, so that I don't, regain every last pound I lose. But ultimately, I'm also looking at it to treat that last little bit of visceral fat around the belly, because I do still have the belly. I want the belly gone. I don't necessarily need abs, but I'd like there to be like a nice flat belly, There can be some fucking subcutaneous fat there, or even a little bit of overhang, as long as it's fairly flat. I'm not there yet. When I get there, I'll let you know. I'll show you the pictures from long ago to now. But ultimately, it's an experiment, not a requirement. Intermittent fasting, shorter fasts, alternate day fasting, all perfectly legit lifestyles that are good enough. And yes, a long fast can get you dramatic results very quickly, but it's been my experience that the more dramatic a result you get, the easier it is to regain the weight, so to speak. Alrighty. Lucretia, Scott, if you are prone to depression, be careful with dry fasting. I am prone to depression. In fact, I did experience a mild depression this week. Nothing severe. I wasn't completely grounded. Just one of my days was a little less productive because I was kind of down. I'm better now today. So and I did see that in the research I have done so far on dry fasting, that there is definitely a mental health issue that can arise as well. Quite the contrast from some of the water fasting data, which suggests that you can improve depression, especially post-fast during the refeed phase, and not to mention the calming euphoric phase, which happens between days 5 and 7. So, I have a lot of issues with that. Psychic Outlaw Chanel, once again, will you do a carnivore week, not fasting with carnivore Scott? I'm going to do a carnivore month, probably this summer, just to see what happens. It depends on where I'm at, too, because this fast may make a huge dent. And, and then I might be at the bottom end of my desired weight loss, and where I might have to, if I want to do any serious experimentation, I might have to bulk up first. If I do decide to bulk up, I may even decide to pound a fuckmaster, for a while. Not cardio, but mostly lifting weights and resistance training to try and put some weight on in muscle instead of in fat. But I haven't decided that I want to commit to lifting yet, because that's a very time-intense endeavor, building muscle. And but we'll see. There is carnivore experiment coming in my future, though. I do plan to test it out because I'm intrigued by not eating veg. To be honest with you, most of my standard American days have very little veg, and I didn't have a whole lot other than getting fat and becoming pre-diabetic. I had no vitamin deficiencies that, to speak of, which is weird. Makes you wonder about the whole supplement industry at this point. Oh, let's see. Donna Kempson, what blew me away was that they had whole wards dedicated to just fasting in German hospitals before World War II. The best science was coming out of Germany, etc., but was forgotten after the war for obvious reasons. And that's true. There's a lot of science around the world that just doesn't get played here in the United States, especially because it's from around the world. Russians also have a lot of shady science, as far as I've seen some really fucked up clinics and stuff that are more like money grabs and scams. But I don't believe the fasting studies fall in that realm based on, you know, that happened in a mental hospital, one of them. And there's a good amount of data that they monitored as far as biomarkers go. And that to me is very rock solid versus, oh, they did this, you know, here's the anecdotal evidence. I like to know that there's data collected on micronutrition, on blood lipids, on all of that stuff when they're documenting fasting. And there's a lot of data out there, not just from those countries, but from all over the world. Even here in the United States, we have a True North clinic, which regularly does long fasts with supervised fasts with people. I wish there were more clinics that did this, that would show this, especially in regards to cancer treatment. There is so much evidence that should be having people going, hey, this happened with the chemo rats. We gave them chemo and we fasted them, and look, they lived and did rat shit while the other rats that just got the chemo died. We need to expand that to, okay, we need a group of rats that are just fasting. Need a group of rats with fasting and keto, and we need a group of rats with, you know, standard of care, and see how that works. And then we need to take those studies and do human studies, clinical trials. And some people can't wait for that. Some people with cancer are doing this shit on their own. And we need more clinical supervised fasting. A lot of people don't fast because they're fucking scared. They're afraid because they've been told their whole life that they got to eat 3 times a day or they're going to fucking die. Even though it makes no sense in common sense. We would not be here if we had to eat that often. But people are so scared that we kind of need the medical industry to get on board and start, you know, and I'm surprised they haven't done this. This is a way of monetizing fasting, you know. But now you got to go to a third world country to get a supervised fast. You can't do it in the United States necessarily, unless you go to True North, I guess. You know, and it's not a plug. I'm not a big fan of True North. They're vegan. But, you know, and yes, Lucretia, I know they're vegan, and I don't agree with that. But they do medically supervised water fasting, so I can forgive them for being vegan. Just because they pump you out and tell you to be a vegan doesn't mean you have to be a fucking vegan. So yes, they are saving lives with water fasts. I wouldn't attribute that to the vegan diet. I'd attribute that to the fasting. But there are clinics outside of the United States, particularly in Germany. I think that documentary said 20% of Germans do long water fasts. They have clinics. You go, you spend a week. They make sure you don't die while you're fasting. They make sure you get enough water. They make sure all your, you know, biomarkers are good. Blood pressure, heart rate, all of that, they make sure you're good. And that's probably the proper way to do it. But because we're here in the States and we don't have access to a whole lot of places to do supervised fasts, and our doctors take big shits on us if we tell them, we're forced to just say, hey, well, I guess I'll just take a chance. And that's what I did. And that's what I do. And this next fast could be bad for me. I don't know. But I can't go anyplace and get medical supervision without spending shit tons of money and going in regularly and doing all that. And I'm not doing that. I'm taking my chances. I don't recommend anybody else take the chances. If you can get yourself supervised in some way, even if it's going to the clinic every couple days to get your blood panels, then you should do so if you're doing a long fast. And you should have the body fat to support a long fast. You should not be doing this if you're down to 20% body fat, because you're going to burn a lot of lean mass. You're going to become emaciated if you do a very long water fast. It's going to happen. You don't believe me? Watch Naked and Afraid, where they do 21 days. And see how a normal body weight person looks after 21 days with virtually little to no food. And they're burning off their lean mass. They lose all kinds of weight. It gets bad. So. All right. Narda Fawcett. Donna, most of the German work conducted at that time was driven by Otto Warburg. That's that Warburg effect he's the author of. cancer studies, commonly called the Wahlberg effect. Worth reading about his work. And I agree that I thought it was Warburg, not Wahlberg. Warburg. Yeah, it's Warburg. But the Warburg effect is, how cancer cells can't metabolize anything but glucose. They can't metabolize ketones. And basically, if you're not giving cancer cells the food they need, they can't grow. You're not going to kill them that way. There's no proof in the Warburg effect of, starve, because you're always maintaining a baseline glucose level. You're always creating glucose through gluconeogenesis, even if you don't eat any carbs or sugar. That's why they're looking at combining chemo with keto. So you're starving the cells so they can't grow, and you're making them vulnerable. You're changing their DNA profile, and through epigenetics and all of that, they're able to determine that it makes them vulnerable, protects your cells, and the chemo targets the cancer, and the cancer is in a vulnerable position, thereby you kill the cancer. That's the theory. There's no proof that that long fasts will kill cancer. You can keep it from growing and slow growth. There's proof of that. But you're not going to kill cancer. You're not going to eliminate cancer. You'll reduce your risk, too, also, of cancer growing and becoming a problem if you regularly fast. And I'll always regularly fast, so hopefully I never get cancer as a result. I might already have cancer cells in my body, but they're not growing very well because I'm keto, I'm fat adapted, I'm not giving them enough fuel. My glucose is usually in the 70s. There's not a lot of food for cancer to grow. And that's ultimately what needs to happen if we're ever going to, defeat cancer and shit. Cat Marlette, thank you for your contribution. Keep on trucking. I don't really want to keep on trucking. I'll keep on making videos and shit, though. So, let me see what else. I feel like I missed a few questions. Did I? Paul Smart, I've just come down with a cold. I may fast until I feel better. Boosts the immune system and human growth hormone. True story. Most animals in nature, when they become ill, they do fasts. They stop eating. And if I were to become ill, I would also stop eating. On a side note, during a time when the flu is all over the news and I'm driving around, people sniffling and sneezing in the backseat of my Uber, I still have yet to get sick this season. It's huge. Like, our emergency rooms are fucking not supposedly turning people away because they're overwhelmed with people with the flu right now. I'm exposed to the public through my job in the bar and my job driving Uber. I'm not sick. Yay me. Now, granted, my immune system's always been on the strong side, but there have been times where I do get sick. And since I've gotten rid of the sugar and alcohol, I haven't even had my allergic reactions that I used to have. I used to have those a lot. The hives, the scratchy, itchy, burny eyes around pets. Don't have that. I have pets get all up in my shit now. Cats are all rubbing their ass all over my face and nothing puffing up. Dogs are coming up and licking my beard and shit, and it's kind of gross and I don't like it, but it happens and I don't get any allergic reaction now. I used to be miserable. I used to have carry Benadryl around for that shit. Gone. So one thing I can attest to is that fasting and keto and getting rid of the standard American diet from my life have cured those things in me. I am convinced of that, especially after watching the science of fasting and all of the research I've done on fasting. I'm positive that I'm no longer allergic as much, if at all, to shit. I don't get fucked up in the spring either, during pollen season. I used to be miserable. I used to plan on being miserable. That's how miserable it would be. It's gone. So yes, if you're ill, I do recommend fasting, water fasting as a treatment, if you have the body fat to support it. If you're already lean, you can't do huge fasts. Nothing over 10 days, I would say. Technically, you could probably get away with 21 days, but you're burning a lot of lean mass, and you're putting yourself in a risk category. have the body fat. A lot of us don't have that problem. A lot of us have 20, 30 pounds we could lose. I myself have about 15 pounds that I feel are left of body fat, and it's all in this little belly area. And that's a nice little reserve. I'd prefer to carry that like in my arms and legs or my ass or something, but it's right around my organs, which I don't like. I'd like to move that around some. If I'm going to put on some weight, I want it to be subcutaneous fat, not visceral fat. But I still think I have visceral fat left because that measurement seems to be the slowest one to go away. Hopefully I'll get that. All right, what else we got? First, let's check the time here. It's 5:14. So we got about 45 more minutes for Q&A for those of you sticking around. I planned 2 hours for today. So let's see what else we got going. Oh. Spive21, a lot of people think beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is another fancy name for ketones, kills the cancer. No, it does not. It is just a substrate that cannot be used to fuel cancer. Cancer is glucose-based, and it's very... The cells are broken DNA-wise. They want lots of energy, and they need lots of energy to grow and multiply. So it's glucose. And if you've limited their access to glucose by being fat adapted, in which case your blood glucose can drop down to the 70s and not feel hypoglycemic in any way because the ketones are filling in the gap for your cells, there's not as much food. There's food, but there's not enough. There's enough to make that they don't die, but there's not enough to satisfy them. This is, of course, based on, this is ongoing research. This is all new science. Yes, the Warburg effect's been around for a long time, but I do believe cancer clinics are just now getting around to studying it. At the same time, I do believe intermittent fasting and keto are great preventative measures. So that if you are carrying around cancer cells, and I do believe most of us are, I know I probably am, especially from my time in the military, that, we keep them from growing. And keeping them from growing is every bit as effective as a cure in my book. If your cancer cells never grow out of control, chances are you're going to live a long health span before it ever becomes a problem. Might become a problem when you're in your 80s and 90s. Which is I'm fine with. If I get sick in my 80s and 90s, okay, I made it. I'm good. I don't want to be in my 50s and 60s getting sick, which I was on path to do if I wouldn't have made the changes that I made and shit. Let's see what else we got here. I feel like I missed a question. Roman Graham. Scott, what do you think about oatmeal as a good carb plant, not the sugary ones? You're not going to like this, but I am pretty much against all of that. I'm not a grain fan. Grain's what you feed farm animals when you want them to gain weight. Grain has only been part of the human diet for the past 10,000 years. And when it was introduced in ancient Egypt, they started to get a lot of the same modern diseases we did. Diabetes, obesity, heart disease, all of these things came around during the advent of agriculture. And now that we get into the modern industrialized agriculture, we've seen everything skyrocket. I tend to lean on the ancestral health side of things. I'm not a paleo advocate necessarily, but I do understand that if you look at what we're supposed to be eating from the standpoint of what would we be eating if we were dropped in the woods with, modern hunting equipment and modern fishing equipment, because we have evolved a little bit in that department, what food would we be able to find, gather, and eat? And the answer isn't oatmeal. You might be able to gather some oats and then grind them down, and I've seen it on survival. I like survival shows sometimes. And I've seen them do that, but it's a lot easier just to gather some berries, some nuts, even to pull out some tubers out of the ground. So they're getting carbs, but they're not refined. They do grind some of them at the best, and that does provide a little bit of energy. Ultimately, what's coveted the most is fat and protein in those survival situations. And if you look at it from that perspective and use that to guide your eating, you'll get healthier, guaranteed, without fail. So, alrighty. System of a Fox. You should come to Low Carb USA conference in Southern California. When is that? I might be interested in that if it's this summer. I agree. I should try and get to some of these and cover them for the channel and stuff like that. I'd like to see and hear some of the people that I follow speak in person, and maybe even get to shake hands with them and ask them a question or two, of things that bother me. But ultimately, it comes down to when, where, how, and how I'm getting there. So, Rosalba True, I can't pronounce your name. Sorry, Rosalba. Thanks, Emily. I'm 45. I've lost over 30 pounds. Have been pregnant twice. Loose skin is a concern. There is evidence that long fasts, if you have the body fat to do them, can burn off loose skin, but very slowly over a long period of time. We're talking maybe years of sprinkling in occasional long fasts to burn off the skin. And it's, autophagy that does that. Autophagy breaks down cells you don't need, and your body is able to identify that there's extra skin there and say, oh, well, we can use that since we got no protein coming in. So, if you have a shit ton of loose skin, then yeah, I guess surgery, but I'd just put up with it and just keep doing fasts. And if I didn't have the body fat to sustain long fasts, but I had a lot of loose skin, I would try to put on 10, 15 pounds of fat. Just eating starchy carbs would probably get the job done in my case. And then I would do the fast so that I would be in autophagy. I'd be using the skin for the protein. I'd be using the fat I built up for the fast. And that way I'd be able to do long fasts once I get to my goal. That's a plan. I do want to do some wilderness fasts to where I go out in the woods with just water and a dream. But if I'm already at my body weight goal, if my body fat percentage is low enough to where, I might even see a little ab action, I will want to regain some fat before I go out and do a long fast. So there's that. Oh, let's see. Kat had a question. Did I miss Kat's question? Kat Marlette, that's a good question. Thank you for Lucretia for pointing that question out. How do you prepare for long water fasts? Pretty much the way I'm doing it on keto that I tried to do it this week is I tried to gain weight this week. I upped the amount of meals per day I'm eating. I snack on keto. I've raised my caloric intake significantly this week in an attempt to put on some weight. However, what I didn't anticipate is my metabolism fighting back. Remember how I told you your metabolism can ramp up on a ketogenic diet? Well, that's what happened. I overate this week. I overate fat. I overate some protein. I did not overeat carbs. I kept my carbs as close to 50. I did think I went over yesterday. I feel like I did because I did have some extra Veronica's Health Crunch, and I had a couple of spoonfuls of fucking Halo Top, which I think might have put me over 50. But for the most part, I've been cramming protein and fat throughout the day, trying to gain weight unsuccessfully, and I've been really warm. I've been really energetic. I've wanted to go out and do things. My metabolism ramped up, and to compensate. So I guess in the future, if I was going to prepare for a long water fast, first of all, if you have a lot of weight, if you're still obese, still highly overweight, you don't really have to do much prep. Make sure you're hydrated. Make sure you're eating lots of nutrient-dense foods, lots of electrolytes, because you're storing all of that, and you will use it in the beginning stages of the fast. As you dump your water weight, you're going to lose out on some electrolytes, so on and so forth. You might get keto flu if your standard American diet. The best way to prepare for a long water fast would be fat adapting, becoming ketogenic for 6 weeks prior to the long water fast. That'll make that water fast go a hell of a lot smoother. You'll also be highly adapted. You'll be very easy to switch over. You know, you're not going through that switching from a carb burner to a fat burner stage of fasting, which happens around 72 hours, making that the hardest part of a long water fast. But I would say just if you're low body fat and you want to do a long fast, you obviously need to put on enough fat to sustain the fast. I would say a good 10 pounds of fat if you can. Keeping in mind water weight's a thing, so you might not be putting on as much fat as you think. I thought I was putting on fat today, and it turns out to be food weight. So, I prepare for making sure you have enough body fat on board, making sure you're hydrated enough, making sure you're not medicated, making sure you check with your doctor, make sure your blood lipids are all good, let them know what you're going to do. They probably won't like it. Tell them, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway if you want. That's up to you. It's between you and your doctor. Leave me out of it. And then that should be it. If all your health is good, you're not on medication, you're not having any issues, you've done some shorter fasts without problems, then you might be ready for a long water fast and just stocking up on micronutrition. The other important thing on a long fast is how you break the fast. It should be gradual. I plan on doing so by starting out by eating fat, of course, in small amounts, get the digestive system fired back up. And then gradually working in more keto, being gentle. You might have to shard or something at the end, before you start really locking in and digesting food again. But don't overdo it. Definitely do not break it in a high sugar way. There's been proof that can even kill you. As far as refeeding syndrome, look up refeeding syndrome and what the research is on that. And it's a thing. That happened in the Minnesota starvation experiment. Refeeding syndrome is a legit risk of a long, prolonged fast. So breaking your fast is proper. Generally, post-fast, you should eat for twice as long as the fast. So if you did like a 10-day fast, then you should eat normally for 20 days following it. And I plan on doing full keto eating when I return from the 10-day fast, and I'll do that for probably the rest of February. And depending on how things go and how the weight gain is and all of that. You're going to regain weight because you did slow your metabolism with the fast. What you eat after the fast will largely determine how quickly and how much weight you regain. If you're fat adapted in keto, you can raise your metabolism fairly quickly before regaining all the weight. So that's the advantage of keto over the standard American diet. If you switch directly to a standard American diet approach after a long fast, your metabolism will not speed up very quickly at all. You will probably regain all the weight from the fast and may even regain more than you started with, thereby completely canceling out the fast. So those are the cautionary things with a long fast. And do so at your own risk. I always say check with a doctor before you do a long water fast. I'm not a fucking expert. I'm just an asshole. In fact, a lot of you have done longer fasts than me. 10 days, you guys have already done some 14, 21 days. I get all kinds of feedback on people that have done successful long water fasts. And you should tell your story if they work, and you should tell your story if they don't work. And I plan on doing that with this 10-day fast. If it works, and then I regain it all back, you'll know that pretty much I just spun my wheels. Although I might be a little healthier because I might have detoxified a bit. But ultimately, my goal for the long fast is finally eradicated any left visceral fat I have left. I want the visceral fat gone. so that if I do put fat on, it's not just in the belly area. So, Psychic Outlaw Chanel, Scott, if people can fast for so long, why are the refeeding days supposed to be longer? It's pretty much just precautionary, and it takes a little while for your metabolism to ramp back up, and you want to give your body enough of a signal that you're not starving anymore. You want your body to say, okay, we got food again, and to ramp your metabolism back up. Otherwise, you'll tank your metabolism and it'll stay there. So that's why ultimately the biggest reason, I think. The other reason is during the fast, you are using up some of the resources in your body. Your gut microbiota is being consumed. You're getting vitamins and minerals that way. You siphon a little bit of minerals from your bones. You want to put those back. Bones regenerate continuously. So a lot of the things that you normally need to function, you're using up resources in your body during a long fast, not just fat and muscle, and damaged tissue and all of that. It's already been established that once you are deep into a fast, 96% of your energy is coming from stored body fat until your body fat drops below a certain percentage, at which point you burn more lean mass. And if 50% of your lean mass is gone, you die. Well, guess what? You're burning some lean mass, you're burning fat, you're using up micronutrition, you're using up electrolyte storage during that fast. You need to put all of that back. You need to rebuild the cells that you used for gluconeogenesis during the fast. Good news is, if you're all about the gains and you want muscles and shit, it's very easy to rebuild any muscle loss. All you do is work out and eat more. And eat more healthy, of course. So you got to rebuild. Fasting is taking shit down. You got to build. And when you build it, after you tore it down, you'll build it better. You don't see anybody do renovations on a building and put the same shitty shit in there, do you? Well, your body doesn't either. You put all good, strong, healthy cells in to replace the cells that you destroyed during the fast. So the refeed period is especially important in terms of fasting. There is a such thing as too much fasting. If you do it too often and you don't refeed enough, and if you're doing intermittent fasting, you're kind of refeeding regularly. But if you're doing these long fasts, you need a period of normal eating to rebuild. And even eating a little excessively in ketogenic state to not only rebuild and give yourself the building blocks to rebuild all the tissue that you destroyed, but you also need to ramp up your metabolism. And I would say, on average, it's been kind of anecdotally documented, it should be about twice the length of the long water fast. All right, who's talking about whiskey? Let's see. I'm scrolling through to see if I missed any really good questions popping out at me. Who the hell's talking about whiskey? Spive21. Darth, the whiskey's going down as usual. Hi, Spive, no whiskey tonight. So, you guys are drinking, huh? I'm not drinking. I haven't had a drink. I'm good. But, it's going to affect your results, by the way. Fatty liver. Just saying. But, yeah. No drinking for me. And haven't wanted to, ironically. Despite some situations that could be conducive to me drinking, haven't had any. And don't want to. And shit. I know it sounds like I'm trying to convince myself, but I don't want to drink. All right. Enough talk. I'm not really interested in talking about you guys getting shit-faced, so let me find a question. Let's see. System of Fox wrote, it's coming up soon. I'll message you details on Facebook. Stephen Finney may be there. By all means, that's a long drive. I wouldn't fly there because it's cheaper to drive. especially now. But let me know if it's sometime this summer and I got time, I'll make my way out that way. Right now, because of the part-time job, I can't break away for more than 5 or 6 days at a time. But in the summer, I anticipate being a little more flexible and available. Let's see. Sorry for the dead air. I'm trying to find more questions that I maybe missed. Looks like I didn't miss any more questions. So now I'm going to take some time while we're here and do some plugs. For many of you who may not have kept up with my website, if I can find a page here and put it in there. ScottTheTruckDriver.com. Did I spell it right? Yeah, I did. Which, of course, should pop up on Google, and it does. I hope. All right. So on the channel, when you come here, you can, of course, I've put some new things up. One of the things I've put up is recommended products. This does support the channel if you purchase any of these through these links. I will be adding to this as new products come up that I endorse. I've had requests for some keto products to be put to this so that people can buy it through these links to help support the channel. You know, since they're buying stuff anyway, they can help, you know, keep things going. So this is a new addition. For those of you not aware, I've also got the submit research where you can submit articles, videos, or just your story, your success story, your failures, questions you may have, anything you want to submit here. You can also do it through, I get quite a few through the contact me part too. Also on the support your YouTube channel, this is where you can find the podcasts. It's pretty much the store. You can do tips through the virtual tip jar and all of that. And last but not least, the daily blog. You can just come here and read. It's like typed videos at this point where I have a topic I talk about and pretty much go from there. So check it out, ScottTheTruckDriver.com. You can, of course, like me on Facebook and stuff like that. If we click this top link and come back here, you see all these social icons. You can follow me on Facebook, where I will post every time I update the website or put something on. I tend to update it on Facebook as well. So like Scott the Truck Driver on Facebook. Okay, that's enough plugging and shit. We might cut it short if we don't have any more questions. Donna Kempson, does anybody experience getting picked on about doing keto? My boss had made comments and makes remarks in front of other colleagues. He always asks me question. He's vegan so completely. I don't necessarily get picked on because people have been unable to dispute the fact that I got good results. You might get picked on early on when your results aren't as readily apparent, but when you walk in to the room and the people that are picking on you outweigh you and have worse health problems than you, and they're on medications especially, and arm yourself. If you know that they're fucked up in some way, be like, look, you wouldn't be fucked up, you did this. You know, and also mention to them that a lot of them that are maintaining their health are doing so the hard way by eating less, moving more, and that kind of stuff, which has been proven wrong for the past 40 years. If you get on your soapbox, well armed with research enough, they'll leave you the fuck alone. And they have with me. And you got to be firm and stand your ground. Because you know what? Them vegans are standing their ground. You don't hear nobody fucking with vegans. Vegans already have a reputation for being zealot, you know, about their diet and being, you know, hardcore. You need to be the same as a keto. We need keto to be recognized every bit as much as the vegan diet as far as being respectful of it, of our choices and whatnot. We make the choices for different reasons than the vegans do. The vegans do so for ethics. We do so for our own health and the health of those around us, really. In reducing carbs and sugar, we are able to reverse an epidemic that has consumed most of modern society. And stepping outside that box and someone giving you shit about it, they're just opening themselves up to failure. And 20 years from now, that same person isn't going to give you shit when they're on a smorgasbord of fucking medications, when they're checked into the hospital every week just to get, to see if their dietary eat less, move more strategies affecting their heart disease in addition to their fucking statins. There's all kinds of facts that you can dispute people who give you shit with. And just arm yourself with them. Have them ready for the argument. That will happen. But as people see you lose all the weight, you become fully healthy, you become more active, you feel better, you're in a better mood. As people see that, they'll leave you alone because they have nothing they can criticize. It's easy to criticize someone just starting out when they haven't got there yet. But once you get there, you've disarmed them. They have no excuses left. Initially they say like, well, you're not there, you still got a belly, or you're still fat, I ain't doing that. But when a couple 6-7 months later you walk in and your normal BMI and all your blood panels are normal and you reversed all your health conditions, what the hell are they going to make fun of? They'll have to actually start to analyze their own lives and their own health at that point. And you should brag about it. You go to the doctor and get a checkup and everything's fucking great. Get a copy of that paper and say, look, you go into your coworkers, look what happened. I cured my diabetes. Look at my A1C. It dropped into normal. Fuck you. See this? See it? Fuck you. That's what you got to do. So that's what, arm yourself. Stand up for yourself. Don't let people bust your balls. Bust their balls. I do it all the time. Oh, you're going to eat that donut, are you? You like that? You realize you're killing yourself one donut at a time? They will fuck with you. And you'll always get the occasional asshole. I don't give a shit. This donut tastes good. I enjoy my life. You're miserable. Fuck you. Those happen. But ultimately, the end results are, what's going to shut them the fuck up. When you get to your goal and you show them how easy it was for you to get there versus the eat less, move more bullshit, it'll be indisputable at that point, and they'll want to try it. I've seen people turn completely around from giving me shit to saying, I'm going to do this. And it takes you getting to your goal. So don't give up. Don't let people talk you out of it. Get to your goal so that you can say, see, asshole, it worked. Talk shit now, motherfucker. Something like that. Wisecracker. Scott, you were talking about fructose earlier. Does the disaccharide sucrose, table sugar plus fructose, have the same effects as something like high-fructose corn syrup? That is correct. It does. They're pretty much the same as far as the liver is concerned. Your liver has a very low tolerance for fructose. As in, if you probably have more than 5 grams of table sugar, you are going to turn it directly into fat. You are exceeding your liver's capacity at that point to metabolize the fructose. If you keep it under 5 grams, most likely it's all going to end up in your liver glycogen storage. But if you overwhelm your liver, you are triggering all kinds of responses that create bad, low density LDL, liver fat, for fatty liver. The biggest cause of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, without a doubt, is fructose. And your body metabolizes fructose the same way it metabolizes alcohol. So it stands to reason if you overdo it on fructose, you get fatty liver disease. Same thing with alcohol. If you overdo it on alcohol, you get fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease increases hepatic insulin resistance. Increasing that can cause more fat buildup. And it also causes you not getting energy to cells that need energy. And it just starts this chain reaction of shit. Sugar is bad. Also, sugar lights up the nucleus accumbens. So it has an addictive reward-seeking pathway for everyone. They studied this shit. And if you eat it, you want to eat more of it. And you'll do whatever it takes to eat more of it. And it only takes one cookie to set you on that path. I know. I am a former addict. If I had a cheat day, by the end of the cheat day, I wanted more cheat days. I wanted more cookies. I wanted more cakes. I wanted more sugar. And sugar's hidden in 80% of processed foods. So if you ever find yourself craving a lot of processed foods, well, that's that reward-seeking behavior triggering you to say, hey, you remember that cheeseburger you had with the fucking 10 pounds of ketchup on it? Sugar. With the bun loaded with high-fructose corn syrup at McDonald's. Well, you know what? We want more of that. That's what that reward system is doing. So just because you might not eat cookies and cakes and shit, you might still like the bread laced with sugar. You might still want the healthy yogurt with 30 to 40 grams of fucking sugar in it. Because your brain remembers what you eat. When you get that center lit up and it tells you to do it again, that's what the cravings come from. So we don't need fructose at all to survive. None. Zero. No organ in the body requires fructose. Period. There is no purpose for sugar other than it being an addictive drug. To make it sweet. To make that nucleus accumbens light up. To give you the dopamine spike followed by the reward-seeking behavior to do it again. That is programmed into us and that the food industry takes advantage of. To keep you coming back for more. Sorry. I got triggered a little bit. My bad. I'll try not to be as triggered. But to answer your question, you do have a little bit of fructose tolerance. Anything more than 5 grams, I'd say you're pushing it of sugar. Okay. Spy21, I'm off all my blood pressure meds after 20 years since on keto. And that's commonly been reported to me. It fixes so much, and yet people seem so reluctant to accept it. Let's see here. Let's see, Cheryl Stark, I have so very far to go. It will be nice when it is more noticeable. Started at 275, only 5'4", very determined. I refuse to get on the scale for more than once a month in fear of disappointment. I will not take medicine, so I'm determined to get there. And, you know, you should keep that determination. Every time you fall off the way, and you will, you're gonna. I fell off a lot. I fucking rode that goddamn horse into the ground more than once. Tumbled around in the fucking horse shit. Always get back on the horse. Always try and ride it longer each time. The quicker you can get the addictive foods out of your life and replace them with foods that take away hunger, the better. Hunger is your enemy. You are going to be hungry. Even if you start on keto, you'll be hungry. You'll overeat keto in the beginning. And you should start out. If you really want to lock this in and you're obese, you need to get the carbs and sugar out of your life. Even if it's just temporary. You might be able to gradually, after a couple years, reintroduce some of the healthier carbs. Nothing fructose-based. Nothing with standard American diet. Nothing in packages. But you might be able to have a little bit of fruit here and there. You might be able to have some potatoes or rice or something healthy along those lines, carb-wise, after you've fixed everything. And I'm going to experiment with that when I get there. I'm almost there. I might even get there with this next fast. I don't know. And then I'll experiment. Because I know I'm not going to do any damage I can't fix at that point. Especially since there's no sugar and alcohol in the mix. And above all else, if you do nothing else, if you don't do keto, you don't do anything else, you need to get the sugar and alcohol under control in your life, which means you're eliminating 80% of the food in the grocery store. It means you're not going out to any fast food places. It means when you go to a restaurant, you got to be like a fucking investigative reporter with the waiter to see what's going into the foods they're giving you. Can't tell you how many times the motherfuckers tried to pass margarine off as butter. Bastards. You know, it's to the point now where I go out to eat every once in a great while, and majority of my food comes under my control in the whole food section of the supermarket. There are some keto junk foods I eat, but I know exactly what they are. I exactly know how much to eat of them. You know, it's getting all of this under control so that you can undo years of damage and get to a point where maybe you can be a carb burner, but not a shitty carb burner. Not a standard American diet, fat mixed with carb eating motherfucker. But to where you can have a carb meal with low fat, or a high-fat, low-carb meal without issues. And then if you notice you're getting issues, you know you're doing something wrong, because they do come back. If you do this and you get to your goal and you jump back on the standard American bandwagon, you're going to very quickly regain all of it. That's just how it goes. So somebody just rang the fucking doorbell and I can't answer the door. All right. So that's what we're at. They're just hopefully, it's probably a package. I'm doing it 5:50 on time. All right. So I missed the bus on the package. Speaking of packages, while I'm at it, I did get some mail. Put the full cam on here. And, yeah, they're really beating on the door. All right. I received Chalk Zero in the fucking mail. Looks like, I don't know who sent it. It was a drop ship from Amazon, so I don't know. Sinfully Healthy, Chalk Zero, Natural, Low Carb, No Sugar Added. Has milk chocolate, which is unsweetened chocolate, cocoa butter, whole milk powder, soluble corn fiber. I'm a little concerned with that ingredient. Sunflower lectin, monk fruit extract, which is an artificial sweetener. Well, it's a natural artificial sweetener, as in 0-calorie sweetener. That's way more sweet than, sugar and all of that. And Madagascar bourbon vanilla beans. Contains milk, which means it probably has lactose. 4 grams of carbohydrate, 3 grams of dietary fiber, 1 gram of sugar. So I will try this, although I don't know that it will become part of my diet. Thank you, whoever sent this to me. For those of you unfamiliar, I do have an address that you can send shit to in the link in the description. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because I know that motherfucker probably left the package on my door. But they'll come back later if they didn't. So, but yeah, I will give that a try. And actually, since I'm here, let me try it now. See if it tastes alright. Shit. But thank you, whoever mailed this to me. Oh, it's individually wrapped and shit. We'll try one of those. Serving size is 1 piece. 50 calories. 4.5 grams of total fat. 10 grams. So I'm getting 1 net gram of carb, which looks like it comes from some form of sugar, and I would say that my suspicion is that soluble corn fiber is the culprit there. So let me check and see. Crumbles up. Not a fan. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm so used to the baker's chocolate, the 100% unsweetened chocolate, that when you add milk to it and you sweeten it this much, not as appealing. So thank you for whoever sent that. I've given it a try. I will probably donate it to one of the sugar burners that I know. But yeah, that would be you could eat that and be keto. It's a keto junk food. You don't want to do that every day. You don't want to do it often. And the sugar's low enough, it's not going to fuck you in the liver. It's not going to kick you out of ketosis if you keep your carbs under the limit. You are going to get an insulin response, obviously. So you should probably do that in the context of a meal. But too sweet. I think I'm a lot more sweet sensitive. I've also cut back on my artificial sweetener a lot. I only put 1 packet in my coffee now, which seems to be enough. So I'm more sweet sensitive than I used to be. So now things that are sweet like that are just too sweet. You know, even Halo Top has become very sweet to me, and that's pushing the limits. I eat half a serving of that when I eat it, and that's about 3 grams of sugar, and that's still a lot. So thank you whoever sent that. All right, I have to wrap this up, mainly because there might be a package sitting on my fucking door right now. I want to thank all of you for coming today and for participating in the chat. There was some great questions. I feel like we hit some good points today. It's been a hectic couple weeks for me. I'm really trying to get caught up on things. I want to be able to crank out more videos, but I think I'm pretty much stuck at 3 videos a week, including the live stream. Because if I wouldn't have live streamed today, I would have produced a video instead. Another bottleneck I have is I'm upgrading the internet, so I might be able to, in the future, deal with that. So I'll have better. I want to be able to stream in 1080. I can't stream in 1080 right now because the internet sucks. So there's that. Let's see here. I gotta bring some fucking credits up for the end. So thank you to everyone. Let me make sure I got to all my super chatters as well. I sometimes missed a lot because I was talking extensively during the commercials, or during the questions, I mean. So thanks Lucretia, Janie Bug, and Kat Marlette for your contributions today, making this channel possible. And I appreciate all your contributions in the comments and all your contributions to the research page. Many of you who attended chat today, I know Chanel does a lot, have mailed me a lot of articles, a lot of videos to check out. In fact, that video that we talked about earlier came through ScottTheTruckDriver.com through one of your submissions. I have a laundry list of those to go through. I might not even get to all of them, but I'll do the best I can. Just be patient with me. Keep submitting them because I do look at them, and I do spend a significant part of each day going through some of them. But I don't want to create videos until I'm well informed on the questions you guys asked. And there are some questions which I need to learn. Like, I've had questions about thyroid that I'm researching right now. I've had questions about MS that I'm researching right now, about female interactions with fasting and your cycles and whatnot, things that I'm just not well versed in yet, and I don't feel qualified to answer questions like that. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to go out and learn the shit. So I'm going to learn the shit, and then I'll answer the questions. So I'll do the best I can. Thank you all for coming today. And now I'm going to stall while I prepare the motherfucking... Oh, that's too soon. Yeah, see? This is some high quality production and shit. Alright. So remember, I'm not a motherfucking expert. I'm just a fucking asshole. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit.